Warning, the following video was recorded well before all of the spec maps and permit code names dropped. Enjoy the video.
When it came to Halloween Horror Nights 33, Laura Sauls, the Assistant Director of Creative Development and Show Director for Art, Design, and Entertainment, stated the following.
We really, we feel the best balance here at Universal Orlando is to have 5 horror franchises, intellectual properties, and 5 original content, but that can ebb and flow depending on how many franchises we have to work with that year or how many original content houses we have to work with. In 2024, we actually have 6 original content stories in haunted houses and 4 intellectual property horror franchises in haunted houses.
Now, when it comes to the lineup at Horror Nights, most people know it as 5 IPs, 5 originals, 10 houses total. But looking back at the history of Horror Nights, well, that number has fluctuated and just changed a bit. And by the way, I did notice something that I think Horror Nights may be up to, but more on that a little bit later.
Recording? So cool. What are we doing?
It's recording.
And this just in as breaking news, Mike Aiello has tweeted about Horror Nights. Let's read more into this story. Now, Mike Aiello, if you do not know, has been a part of the history of this event called Halloween Horror Nights, and he has stated construction started with a gif of some flowers basically dying in black and white. Not much more to read into this. Yes, that's right. That's right, Bob. That's right. Now, normally what I am hearing in my responder is typically Horror Nights construction would start at a later date, maybe more so before the summer, but them starting early could mean a lot of things potentially moving forward for this project. Could also mean that Mike Aiello is back to maybe lend a hand, to lend his expertise now that the Epic Universe, the brand new theme park by Universal, is being wrapped up as production is streamlined and it is opening in a few months from this point. That is all the breaking news. Back to you. So looking back at Halloween Horror Nights 28 was the first year that we actually had 10 full houses from that point on. But then fast forward to the very next year at Halloween Horror Nights 29, the numbers actually changed here as well. To note, that year we actually had 6 IPs and 4 original houses. And then fast forwarding to Halloween Horror Nights 30, the count for that was actually 4 IP houses that year. Beetlejuice, The Haunting of Hill House, Universal Monsters, The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, giving us actual 6 original houses that year. So this leaves me a bit confused of where we could end up with this Halloween Horror Nights. It's, you know, a little bit of confusion and a little bit of excitement because 6 originals, 4 IPs, it could be 5 originals, 5 IPs. Who knows? But let's dive into the movie list for this year and see if we can figure out what could be coming to Halloween Horror Nights this year. Now, the first 2 films in this trilogy was actually under the Searchlight Pictures production company, which is now sadly owned by Disney, which means. But this new one is being released by Sony Pictures Entertainment, which, if you know anything with that, last year we had the new Ghostbusters mixed in with a little bit of that previous Ghostbusters, and that was actually brought to us by Sony as well. So therefore, I think they build up a super connection there, and they're like, hey, Sony, baby, we worked together this year, it went well, let's work together next year. But to note that this movie comes out in June 20th. If ever we have a prime date for a movie release to be released and then talked about for Horror Nights, it's a big blockbuster summer release. If this was coming out maybe in February or March, I would say the odds are a little less, but being that Sony is behind this, being that it has enough money and enough popularity, enough people are talking about this, and it's a June release, yeah, that's all the makings for what Horror Nights would want for a house. And especially, you know, the last two films were really popular in themselves. It's not like they were just cult classics or just B-movie, you know, horror movies. They're talked about really highly. So I think it could be set up for 28 years to be coming to Horror Nights for this year. And don't get me wrong, there are some big, heavy horror movies that are coming out this year. Like you have Sinners with Michael B. Jordan. I think that looks really interesting, but I don't think Horror Nights would touch that. Not at all. And then you have the infamous Wolfman, which was previewed or sort of teased last year, and it ended up being pulled. I don't think that's coming this year. As well as I would love, me personally would love to see I Know What You Did Last Summer at Horror Nights this year, but I don't see that happening since we haven't had the other slasher popular 90s movie, you know, at Horror Nights. Universal, if you could pull this off and give it the love and the honor and the respect that you normally give a horror franchise, I will forgive you for all these years of teasing us and letting another theme park use this property. But if you didn't already know, Conjuring: The Last Rites, which is believed to be sort of the last film in the Conjuring universe, or at least, you know, The Conjuring. We might have more spinoffs and stuff down the road, but The Conjuring itself, The Last Rites, comes out in September. I can't think of a better horror movie in a horror franchise that we are sadly missing from Horror Nights that would be the crowning jewel and go down in history, dare I say. If they nailed it, it could go down potentially in like the top 5 franchise horror movie blockbuster horror night houses that we've ever had. But everyone wants The Conjuring at this event, and this could be a perfect lineup. Do I really think it's gonna happen? Probably not. But I mean, one can dream and hope that, you know, The Conjuring: The Last Rites, the last film, it's out in September. This would be a perfect time, if any time, for Horror Nights to bring us this house. But I don't see that happening at all. Nope. Now, if I were to say the words Get Out, The Purge, Insidious, Freaky, Happy Death Day, Megan, The Black Phone, yeah, that list just goes on and on and on, because Blumhouse has released so much horror movies. 2014, they've had horror releases that they were producing or, you know, behind on the production aspect. And Universal and Blumhouse has had such an extensive working relationship, especially in the last couple years. When you look at the fact that Las Vegas, the Horror Nights Unleashed year-round haunt that's happening there, they added The Exorcist Believer, a part of that, which is a Blumhouse release. Yes, without a doubt, I think we are going to 100%, okay, maybe 98% get Blumhouse at this year. But what could be coming this year? Now, the elongated history of Blumhouse and Horror Nights can be a separate video all on its own. Wink, wink. But Blumhouse has been a part of Horror Nights starting way back in Horror Nights 27, where it was featured in the scare zone The Purge in New York. Fast forward, it's been a part of houses, it's been part of shows at Horror Nights, it's been part of scare zone and houses. Just last year we had, it be a part of the tram tour and it be a part of its own scare zone in Orlando. So Blumhouse, it's most definitely coming back to Horror Nights this year, but in what capacity? Now, 2025 is slated to be Blumhouse's big year of horror releases. Starting off, we would have the Black Phone 2 coming out. We have Megan 2.0, and as well as the sequel to the major hit for the company, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which is slated to come out this year as well. But where could this all end up at Horror Nights? Could we get just a single Megan house? Or could we get a Horrors of Blumhouse featuring the Black Phone and Megan sort of being that comedy and scary element? We could see that, but then you have the elephant in the room, which is Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which I know everyone is clamoring for this to come to the event. They've been dying for it. They've been calling for this for years. Would this be the year that finally makes its mark? Or is this maybe slated for Las Vegas at some point in the future? As well as we sort of have confirmed dates for Horror Nights for this year. Now, typically what would happen is Horror Nights would generally say in the fall season, they wouldn't give sort of speculation of any kind of dates. But since we had Horror Nights started last year in August, on the Universal Pass holder page under the 2025 tab about all the stuff coming, it is listed that we have Halloween Horror Nights stating, at least on this webpage, it is starting from August to November. So obviously you can look at the dates and sort of generalize what we had last year and how that will sort of factor in. So if you're looking to book opening weekend or keep an eye out, obviously I don't think they're gonna go any earlier than what they did last year, but probably generally around that same time. So start planning, obviously early. Don't wait for stuff to get booked or tickets to rise, especially this year with Epic opening. I predict it's going to be one of the craziest, busiest Horror Nights we have ever seen. If we thought last year was bad, this year is going to have something in store for us. So start planning now. So we have to talk about the clown that is in the room. And no, I'm not talking about Jack. I wish I was. Yeah, the next part is going to shock a lot of people. It's going to probably upset a lot of people. When the early rumors of Art the Clown coming to Halloween Horror Nights first started, with the interview and the creator talking much about how he's been in talks with Horror Nights about something potentially happening, and then therefore we had those early speculation rumors dropping about Art the Clown potentially coming this year. I am not on the train of excitement. I have no problems with Art the Clown. I like Art the Clown. I like his movies somewhat, but when it comes to Horror Nights, I mean, there's so many other things I can think of that I would rather have than Art the Clown. You know, I would rather have Ghostface. I would rather have another Freddy Krueger house, even though I know we've done that before, but I feel like with a lot of technology and a lot of stuff they've done, previously that they can knock it out of the park with these properties. But then I think back to something like Triplets, which was just a slasher type house, which was kind of boring. And when you look at Art the Clown, he doesn't really have too much going for him. He doesn't have a memorable score. All he has is pretty much gory kills, and that's kind of what he stands on. Slasher movies, when you have someone that doesn't talk, like take for instance Jason, you have the camp, Crystal Lake, you have the music, you have kill, kill, kill. I mean, really, we're only going to probably see 2 Art the Clowns, and that would be the Christmas Santa Claus Art the Clown, and then the regular Art the Clown, and maybe the sidekick character. We can have that thrown in there. But I just have to say, when all this talk about Art the Clown coming, I'm just not on the excitement train. I mean, it could be a fantastic house if it were to come, but as it stands right now, I really think it could potentially come to Horror Nights this year, as much as it pains me to say that. But yeah, Art the Clown possibly for Horror Nights this year. So what I was talking about earlier could be wrong, but I have a working theory. Hear me out. So when you look at the slate of what Horror Nights does, they typically do 5 IP houses. And obviously you have the big 3, which are the commercial ones, the ones they promote in all the commercials, the merchandise. It's the big 3. And while you usually have a throwaway extra IP house, which is like Trick or Treat or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or, you know, Horrors of Blumhouse, and then you have Universal Monsters kind of rounding about the slate of IP houses. But what if, I think Horror Nights last year did the big 3 and they're testing this. What if they're only sticking with just 3 big IPs to kind of pull people in, and then they can do all the original stuff themselves. They don't really need to tie contracts or give out more money or do anything with the merch, you know, because they can tie it in with the originals and an icon. It's kind of a good theory there.
Hey, bada bing, you know those Ghostbusters rescued the city again, so we're throwing a summer parade for them. And afterwards, make sure to come over to New York City, located in Universal Studios, Florida. Don't ask any questions. And stop by Ivan's New York Deli and Groceries. Best summer treats you can ever eat.
Tastes like lemonade. Bite of that, and that's a no-go. Now, when you look at the elongated history of Horror Nights and movie properties, it is synonymous. Especially when you look at the properties they've had: Poltergeist, The Exorcist, The Purge, Freddy, Jason, Leatherface. These are all movies, but lately, especially in the new era of Horror Nights, has become sort of this renaissance of TV shows actually being a predominant big pusher for Horror Nights. And this is kind of an interesting video maybe I'll make at some point. But when you look at some of the stuff they've had recently, American Horror Story was big. Stranger Things. The Walking Dead took over Horror Nights for many, many years. The Haunting of Hill House, which was a Netflix TV series as well. There's such a predominant push about TV being at Horror Nights. Well, that opened up the conversation to not just be about movie releases in 2025, but TV shows as well. And Horror Nights, if you're watching, I would love a Twilight Zone house. I know it would never ever happen because your audience today would be like, what the fuck is the Twilight Zone? Is this related to that vampire movie? Yeah, I know it would never happen, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. Now, there's quite an interesting relationship with the first property we're going to talk about in the TV genre space. Obviously, it was a smash success with Universal and introduced them to a new audience. It, dare I say, one of the top 5 probably most important IP properties that Horror Nights has had. But last year, things got switched up with this property.
Featuring brand new mazes inspired by iconic horror franchises, Six Flags Fright Fest is scarier and stranger than ever.
So where does that leave us in 2025? Well, Stranger Things has wrapped up production on their new season, the final season, and there is no release date at the time of this recording, so that leaves us perplexed. Could Horror Nights be getting Stranger Things again, or could they not? I think if they did, this would be a big, huge success and a return to what most people say was kind of a subpar year, especially if you add Stranger Things back in there. Oh, people are going to be booking those tickets immediately. So I think it would be a huge win for the property and for Horror Nights. But who's to say Six Flags doesn't have a elongated contract with Netflix and bringing Stranger Things back over there. So it's going to be kind of interesting of how this is going to work out nonetheless. And up next, one of the biggest missed opportunities I think Horror Nights has ever had with a property, or at least besides The Conjuring. And let me know if you want to see me do a video on the biggest missed opportunities that Horror Nights has missed out on. That's just a working title, by the way. But I'm seriously thinking this property has everything that you would want in a horror series when it comes to Horror Nights, when it comes to anthology pieces, different time periods, slasher, supernatural. And I'm talking about Fear Street. My God, what a missed opportunity there, Horror Nights. You fumbled that bag right there. It's a Netflix property, so it's kind of interesting if they can sort of remand that relationship with Netflix. I don't know if it's damaged or not, but Fear Street is actually coming back in 2025 to Netflix. There's going to be a new season. I believe it's called Prom Queen, and no idea if there's going to be an anthology piece, if it's just going to be strictly set in the 80s. But nonetheless, I think Fear Street would make a perfect opportunity to add to Horror Nights. It would be a perfect addition. But we'll have to see with Six Flags and Netflix and how that relationship works out. Yeah.